Welcome to the fifth lesson on Python tutorial for beginners, and we will be looking at for loop and indentation in today's video. This video will cover everything you need to know about this topic with detailed explanation. So please subscribe to the channel, click the like button if you find this video helpful, turn on your post on notification so that each time I post a new video like this you'll be notified to come check on it. So with that being said, let's begin with what today's video is about, and we will start with making or opening a folder and create a file where our code will be saved. If you don't already have a folder created, go ahead and create a folder and open it in any code editor of your choice. As you can see here from the previous video, so I will just simply go ahead and open this learning Python folder in my code editor. I will be using Visual Studio Code from here, and in order for me to open this, I will simply first of all minimize this, come to my Visual Studio Code, right click on it, click on new empty window like this, and wait for it to open. And once that open like this, I can come to where I have file, click on this file, come to open folder, click on that, and select that folder that I created earlier on. Click on OK. So and immediately my folder just opened. The reason you are seeing these files already is because this way where we saved our code in the previous videos. So I will go ahead and create a file for this video. Now in order for me to create a file for this video in Visual Studio Code, I have this tiny plus icon where I can simply click on here and give the file a name. I will love to call my own for loop and indentation.py like that. The reason you want to end your file in .py is simply to tell your code editor that all the codes that is going to be written inside here, your code editor should process them as a Python code. So jumping down to what the video is about, what is for loop? What is a loop? A loop is a way of telling Python to keep going through a series of process repeatedly. For example, here if I have a list of users like this, and please, if you are wondering what is list, I really recommend you to go ahead and watch our previous video, because I really took time to explain what lists are and how to identify a list. Okay, so to demonstrate the importance of for loop and to use it to explain what it is. So imagine we want to send greetings to all these users. Now we would just simply say something like this: print. Remember what print is used for? We already talked about this many times. We said that print is just a way of telling Python that I want to see the result in the terminal. Everything that is inside this print function here will just automatically be processed and returned as a result in the terminal. So here, if we want to say good, if I want to say welcome, we want to call the name of these users. Instead of us to say welcome Daniel, that is, then we will just come again and said welcome car like this, and welcome Ansel. Instead of us to print this thing one by one, there is a way we can tell Python just keep going through these users, the name of these users inside this users list, and print greetings for each of them individually. Now what Python is going to do whenever we write this for loop, of course, let us see first how we can write this for loop. So to write a for loop, go ahead and use the keyword for like this, and we can say for user in users, then we end it with colon. Now what we are saying here in this particular line is for every user that is inside this users list, for every user, in this case Daniel is a user, Car is a user, Ansel is a user, John is a user, Fred is a user. So this can be anything. This, of course, this can be for you, but at least you need to give your variable you need to name variables. Remember we talk about variables, how to write good variables. If you have not seen the video, check down the playlist, the topic that we talked about variables. We also go through how to write nice and good variables. So one point there was that your variable should always convey meaning to what you are trying to point out. So in our own case, if we say for you, in users, it's still going to work nicely, but anybody that is reading our code, it doesn't make sense. We can say for you print, we say print welcome, then you, like this. All right. Okay, so if we do this right now and run it, so in order for me to run my code, what I simply do there is, first thing, you hit Ctrl A to save your code. Once I save it, I want to see the result in the terminal. I go ahead and hit on Ctrl plus A5 like this, and immediately I do that, as you can see, Python pushed the result to me in the terminal. But we were talking about the for loop in this case. As we already see, once you give a new variable in this particular place, all these values are automatically pushed to this particular variable, and in this case here is u. But to me, this u doesn't make sense. It doesn't have any meaning. So we can go ahead, instead of using u, we can just go ahead and say user. So what we are saying here is for each user in this particular list, for each user, for user. So this user now doesn't refer to just one user. So what Python is going to do now is, Python will use this for keyword and say, oh, you want me to repeat this process until all the users receive this welcome message. So Python right now is going to go into these users. As you can see, this is users here, and this is where we are dropping it. It's just like saying for cat in cats, for dog in dogs, for cloth in clothes, for car in cars. So once you want to loop on something, it must be either a dictionary, a list of something, let's say kind of a data stored structure, something that you are using to store data inside. Let me put another example. Think of it like you have a school application that you have a whole lot of students that are registered inside your database, and perhaps maybe teachers are also registered inside also, and you want to perform an action that will go through the database and just check all the names of the students that are registered inside that database and perhaps send them a welcome greeting. It will be very hard for you to just look at the first name of the person and say, oh, the name of the person is Daniel, so welcome Daniel. You write the code welcome Daniel, then you go back again and write the code welcome car, you go back again and write the code welcome Ansel. Python provides us with a very nice way that we can easily use the for keyword and just repeat the task. So in this our own case, we said for user in users, that is for each user in all these users, go ahead and send them a welcome greeting, and also put this user here. If you have been following along with the variables and different ways of using variable inside a string, you remember that we talked about f string in that particular video. If you have not watched that, I really recommend you to go and check that out, because from there you will be able to understand what we are doing here. So we said in that video that you can also use f strings, and that existed from Python 3.6. so if you are using Python 3.5 and below, you will not have this functionality of using this f string. So go ahead and use something of this nature when you want to include a variable inside your string. So in this case, we said for user in users, print welcome user. So what Python will do is it's going to say welcome Daniel, and said I'm finished with Daniel. You go back and said oh, I still have another user inside this database, called this like database. So it's going to say welcome car, and say I still have another user, welcome Ansel, okay, welcome John, welcome Fred, until all of them receive the same welcome message. So that is the work of the loop. And in this type of loop that we are doing, we are using for loop. Remember, we have types of loop. We have for loop, we have while loop. So while loop is something that we are going to look at down in the series, but at this particular moment that we are introducing what loops is for you, I am really showcasing you the simplest form of looping through a data structure, and it is for. Remember our last video, we dropped it down on concluding on list. We didn't look at how to loop a list, we didn't look at how to slice a list, we didn't look at how to use range, and all these things are something that we are going to cover in the next video. Okay, I forgot to mention something here. There's something I'm supposed to explain for you, though I've been explaining this all the time. But when you see me use this title method, I'm telling Python to capitalize the first word in every, like, this is what I'm trying to do. Using this .title method is going to help Python to start the first word with capital letter
and start the first word again with capital letter. Just capitalized all the first word in the line of code. That's just the job of this title. All right, we were on the how to do something after looping, so we can go ahead and just say something like this and say print. I can say print. I can say print. Thank you, everyone. All right, so let's make our sentence to look good. All right, so look at what is happening here. You can see immediately after this our loop here, we also have another print statement here. Now there's something I want you to notice in this particular example. I purposely bring this up to use and explain something for you, and what I want to show you right now is called indentation. Indentation, this is something that confused me the very first time I started learning Python, because you'll be hearing all these small to big grammars, indentation, loops, and the rest of that classes, variables, and what do they mean? That's just the fact. If you don't really get to know what this thing means, it would be very hard for you to follow along programming. That's just the fact, because people will keep using the terminology, the jargons of programming, especially in Python here. They will say indentation. What does it mean? So if you are kind of wondering what it means, I'm here to explain what indentation means for you. So if you are writing it down, just go ahead and put it that indentation is simply the white spaces you keep before the actual line of code begins. All right, so I want to use that and show you something here. This is one example of indentation. I just indented this code here. So you might ask me and say, what is this? Now, with the definition of what we just gave, remember that this line of code is supposed to start here. As you can see, it's supposed to start here, but I deliberately just drop some indentation. But why the indentation? One thing you need to understand is that whenever you are using a for loop, a while loop, whenever you are using anything that has to do with this semicolon like this, you need indentation. If you don't put indentation, if you don't leave indentation, Python for sure is gonna throw you an error. That is just the fact. You can't do away with it. Once you are using for loop like this in this particular situation, you must give indentation before the line of code continues. Otherwise, you're gonna get an error. Now, this indentation here that I dropped in Python is always tapping 4 space bar. Like, if you don't have a well-defined code editor, it's going to be, you need to tap your space bar 1, 2, 3, 4 in your keyboard to have a nice indentation. That is just the convention that pip 8 decides and agreed that indentation level should be. Keeping 4 space bar is the appropriate in Python. Alright, now, but if you are using a well-defined code editor like this, my Visual Studio Code that I am using right now, what you need to understand and notice is that immediately I put this colon here and I hit on enter, Visual Studio Code automatically understand that, boom, I am writing a for loop, so automatically it just indents the code for me without no stress. And that's the reason from the initial stage, I recommend that you should go ahead and use a well-defined code editor, and this is one of their benefits. They helps you to write and format the code in a way that is supposed to be, even when you are beginning. But I needed to point your attention to what indentation is. The reason that I'm saying this is that sometimes you write your code, but you'll be surprised that once you are looking at the result, you see a different thing, and you'll be wondering what is going on. Check your code very well. What you need to understand is that once you use a for loop like this, any line of code that has this indentation here, as you can see, is the code that Python is going to run using this for loop. So in our case, we said for user in users. Okay, for users in users, fine. What do you want me to do? I've gone through list of users. So what is it? What do you want me to do? So we go ahead and tell Python, okay, when you go through the list of users, pick each user and welcome them with a welcome message. And that's the reason we are having this. Now I bring another example down here for you to understand something. Now after the indentation here, as you can see, we didn't indent this line of code. So what does this mean? If we don't indent this line of code here, after Python might have finished running this print all the users all the username inside this our users list as you see here. Now Python is going to, just because we didn't indent this, so it's not going to send this message to all the users. It's just going to print it as a kind of summary. Okay, look at what is happening here. Because we didn't indent this particular line, thank you everyone, and that's the reason it cannot carry this thank you everyone and print it as a customized message to all these users. So supposing we also indent this thank you everyone here, let's look at what would have happened. As you can see here, it says welcome Daniel, thank you everyone, welcome Car, thank you everyone, welcome John, thank you everyone. So there are some points that you want to write your code like this, and at some points you also want to write your code like this, but in our own case we want to write the code like this. All right, let us look at if you do mistake and indent unnecessarily while you are coding, Python is going to throw you an error. I need to tell you overhead, but let us look at the type of error Python is likely to give you. In this case, let's use another example called message like this, and we say message, and let us just give a value of what this variable message should hold. And in this case, we want to say each time someone call this message variable, okay, go ahead and say good day like this. Okay, so right now, what if we went ahead and indent this line of code like 1 2 3 4? All right, and from here we now say print message. All right, look at what is going to happen. I hit on Control A to save. Remember to save your work, Control plus A5 to run the code in the terminal. All right, automatically look at what we have. Python is telling me, I've gone to line 16. I've processed your code from the beginning to the end. So I see error in line 16, and the error that I'm seeing here is indentation error. That I am seeing an unexpected indent. So this is what Python is trying to explain, that we are not supposed to indent this code. But why? How does Python know that we are not supposed to indent this code? Number one, because there is no for loop. We are not writing function, we are not writing classes, and these are the things that you would just master as we are coding along with Python. This is something that I'm going to teach you all of them one by one, and you are going to understand them to the fullest. And at the end of the series, you'll be able to also not know them, but be able to explain what they do to another person. All right, so Python is looking at this code right now and say, why are you indenting this line of code? There is no for loop in this your line of code. So how come that you are indenting this code? I will not be able to print this line of code because you are indenting it. So in order for us to fix this particular problem, we will need to return this line of code back to the way it's supposed to be. And if we hit on Control S and Control plus A5 like this, you see that Python now runs this code successfully without any problems, as you can see. So this is exactly what would happen if you indent unnecessarily. All right, we looked at what happens if you indent unnecessarily while you are coding. So let us also look at what would happen if you indent unnecessarily after loop. It might not necessarily pop into an error, but what you will simply have there would be the result that you would have not expect. For example, let us see something like this. We said here for user, in users, we said print, and we said print goodbye. Okay, we say goodbye, and we want to call the name of the user that we are printing the goodbye message to. So what we are saying here is we loop this successfully. We loop through the list of users, and each user will receive a goodbye message like what you are seeing: goodbye Daniel, goodbye Car, goodbye Ansel, goodbye John, goodbye Fred. So we were on the points that said indenting unnecessarily after loop. Okay, let us say that you want to send a message, general message that can say something like that one of before, which is thank you everyone. Thank you everyone. Okay, if I clear the screen and run this again, as you can see, now Python runs all this code, grab users by their username and send them a goodbye message, all of them. Now let's say that we wanted to summarize this greeting and just send everybody in our application one single message that said thank you everyone at the end of all the loops. Instead we did a mistake and we went and indent this. That is where that point says what would happen if you indent unnecessarily inside a loop. And if we indent unnecessarily inside a loop, we might not have an error message, but the result might likely come out in the way that we would have not expected, and this is not what we didn't want. And as you can see here, we have goodbye Daniel, thank you everyone. Doesn't make sense. How can you say thank you everyone to only one user, thank you everyone to one user? It doesn't make sense. This is not what we want. But because that we made mistake and indent where we are not supposed to indent, and that is exactly the reason why we are having that error. So whenever you are running your code, pay attention to your code. If it's not working exactly the way you expected it to run, go ahead and check your code and look at how you indent your code very well. You should be able to spot out the error that you have made. So the last point that I have here is what would happen if you forget a colon. What will happen if you forget a colon? If after writing something like this for user in the users, what will happen if you forget this colon and you go ahead and indent and say 1 2 3 4 and say print user like this? Look at Python. I need to bring this error up so you can see clearly. Look at what Python is saying to us. Let me just drag this so you see. So Python is telling us syntax error, invalid syntax. This is something that if you are not familiar with Python yet, it can drag your head to hit on the wall. Remember what I said? If you're having challenges when you are programming, especially when you are learning how to code, and sometimes you looked at the code and it looks like the code is well written by you, and but you are still having errors, instead of you to just spend 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours cracking your head on how to take down the error, first thing you need to do in debugging here is come to where Python is indicating that it have the problem first. In this particular case, Python is saying line 27. That is where I start having issues. And if you come to line 27 and you look at it very well and examine it again and again and again and again, you are likely to see my code editor is even spotting out this place for me, that there is something that is supposed to be here but I'm not doing it. I need to go back and ask myself, what am I supposed to do here that I'm not doing? And in this case, is that colon. But if you are still finding it difficult, even when your code editor have pointed out the line that you start in having the issue, instead of spending hours and hours trying to debug your code, short and simple, just go to Google, copy this particular line here, like in this one is saying indentation, syntax error and the rest. Just go ahead and highlight something of this nature, right click on it, click on this copy like this, take it to Google and just paste there with Ctrl V or right click and paste. Click on enter. Automatically the error that you have is going to pop up on Google, and you see people telling you what you are not doing and what you are doing wrong. So always remember that programming is not English language, programming is not mathematics, programming is not one scientific language. Programming language is a programming language. It's not your mother's language, it's not a language you know, it's not the one you were born with. This is a language that computer understand, and if you miss the last thing like dot or comma, Python is going to show you an error. Not just Python, if you try to run this code, because this is a computer language, computer is going to disagree with you badly. In fact, it's going to disagree with you madly, and if except you fix the error, computer is not going to agree with you. It would keep dragging with you. Even if you use 100 years to write your code, it's going to drag with you 100 years. So do not try to crack your brain and scatter your head. All programmers run into errors, including professional programmers. Me that I code every day, I still run into errors. So we learn these errors every day, we share these errors, we fix them every day. Simple errors like this, it was pointing out. So if you enjoyed this series and you want to continue seeing videos of this nature, just keep following the series along. Today's one was for loop and indentation. I really encourage you to just check out other videos and watch them, and anywhere you have challenges, go down to the comment section, drop your question, I do my best to answer those. And if you want to contribute to the channel, the easiest way to contribute is give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, turn on your post on notification, and with that being said, I see you in the next video. Bye.